Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we, the storytellers, make a story for you, the faithful listener. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. Little recap from last week. We had an economic system, a government type, and a pantheon. The economic system is a giant supercomputer that accepts updates to its code as currency. Basically, if you can write code that makes it more efficient, then you can that update gets coined and you can use that as currency. So there's lots of people constantly submitting updates, and then updates can then be sold. You know, the certificate of the update could then be sold, and so people are constantly it's a kind of a lucrative business to sit in your garage all day pouring through the code trying to make it 0.00001% better.
I know you threw out kind of you invoked when you were talking about this, the whole, too many cooks spoil the broth.
Yep. And so because I think what I said last time was that because of so many people having written code, it's now like a giant jumble. No one can really understand who it is or how it works anymore because it's been, we'll say 50 to 100 years or so since that's happened. Next, we have a government type. Reed had the ethics-based anarchy, and he referenced the passage in the Old Testament of the Bible where it said, "And at that time, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes." So sort of a system based on extreme freedom, but then with a sort of higher moral stance. So for certain things that can make or break society, there is a kind of, did we say it was a person or people that doled out this justice, Reed, or just kind of the community themselves would kind of enforce this overall ethic?
Right. Everybody, I said that everybody was responsible for their own life and the life of their family, their own liberty and their own property. And it was a great taboo to interfere with the life, liberty, and property of somebody else. And if somebody was behaving badly, I said society would sanction them. You just ostracize them. You don't do business with them. You don't accept that kind of behavior.
Yeah, shoot, shovel, and shut up. And then Seth had the pantheon, which, Seth, I might need your help a little bit to kind of explain it the correct way. So let me know if I do this wrong. It was sort of a higher class of people. So it was kind of a higher society of people who had the ability to operate or act as pantheons. Really, it was kind of operating like really complex systems to be able to like control the weather and stuff.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And you could be chosen to be that. No, you couldn't. You were born with the ability to be it, but then those people were kind of segregated from society and kind of taught, when you get your 52 minutes of controlling the weather, you want to make sure you do it right.
Yeah.
This is what?
Yeah. And then whoever, almost like it was tested out, where then if you were better at it, you then could test into the higher position and outseat someone that was already there.
Right. Cool. So with that, we launch in. What story elements do you guys have? I had hero.
I have fighting style.
I have Ka-Tet.
Do you guys want to hear about the hero or the fighting style or the Ka-Tet first?
No, let's hear the hero.
I could do fighting style. I think it would be easier to do that first.
All right.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm gonna just do. I got an idea. The fighting style I've kind of borrowed from another great story. And if you have not read Dune, I suggest that you just pause this and then read Dune. And then if you're then at the end of that remember us, then come back to the story. But there's a fighting style, and it's basically, I'm calling it shield grappling with ever increasing shield technology. It's rendered, for example, projectile weapons virtually useless, because they've got personal shields. People walk around with personal shields.
You're talking like force fields.
Right. So
Yeah.
that if you shoot them, it just sends a projectile back with the same force that it entered with. And if you try to bludgeon somebody, you take a club, it would just throw the club back with as much force as was put into it.
Right.
Or if you used an edged weapon, it is a more focused, so it would be flung back even more forcefully.
Okay.
Or you shot somebody with an arrow, for example, any projectile weapon. Now, and then of course, energy weapons. That gets real messy because it reacts equal and opposite.
Okay.
And people in their personal protection, security systems went to the development of shields around your domicile. So burglary became practically really impractical. This kind of allows for a kind of, what I talked about, we talked about last time, the anarchy. You can have a lot of liberty if even the weakest among you has capacity for self-protection
Yeah.
from thugs, for example.
Yeah.
And fighting developed though because grappling in suits, like you try to grab somebody and wrestling, and you can't get a hold of them because the other guy's shield won't permit it. So you learn to use the forces, the equal and opposite forces, and there's literally sports of like wrestling
Yeah.
where you get in like a force field cage where two people go at it, and that, like, it's a matter of using forces, and you can't really hurt each other, but you can pin the other guy or render them incapable of continuing. It becomes more of a sport, like jousting, rather than actually trying to being able to damage each other. Now there are certain classes of people, and that there are techniques where you can use small edged weapons that you can, move slowly and get a blade, for example. If you move slowly in harmony with the harmonics of the other guy's shield, you may be able to get a blade in far enough to nick them a little bit. And if you've got poison on your blade, I mean, assassination is not unheard of.
Right.
And there are schools of fighting that develop these special techniques, but it isn't something that you have, mobs going out and overpowering other people. It's an advanced technology. So I call it the fighting style. I'm calling shield grappling. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
I had this thought when you were talking about it. One of the things with the shields in Dune is that you could just have a shield on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I was thinking about with this one is that the shield should be, you can have it on, but it doesn't allow air through it.
That's an interesting wrinkle.
Right? So you're grappling these people, but you have to like kind of hold your breath while you're in contact and then move back and then turn it off and then turn it. So it's not only in the energy forces, but it's also in the when you turn it on and when you turn it off.
Right.
Because I was thinking that the hero would discover a flaw in the shield technology, which is if you're touching someone when they turn their shield on, you're covered by the shield as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're in it together.
Yeah.
So his fighting style or someone else's fighting, or maybe that's a thing where like he keeps his shield off, so lulls people into a false sense of security, but then he, can move very fast and gets a hold of them, and then they turn their shield on, and then you're like in the same shield. And then it's like, well, all of your learning and all of your teaching is now out of the, now
That's
you're
cool.
stuck inside with the guy trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Anyways.
You work in tandem inside of the same shield. Just saying that came to mind. Like if you only had one shield, but you had two people trying to fight, right? So then like someone is piggybacking on the other guy and they're fighting. I watched one of those like old corny kung fu movies the other day where one guy got his arms cut off and another guy had his legs burned off with acid. And but then they find this master in the mountains who like teaches them kung fu, but it's this old ancient special kung fu that you have to like work together, and it's like specifically for someone who doesn't have any arms to work with someone who doesn't have any legs.
Yeah, that could be an interesting.
But then and so half the time the one guy is kind of piggybacking the other guy, and then they like twist and he like does the block and then like rolls out and like lunges and then like rolls back onto his back, and then the one guy
do I sense a Ka-Tet members thing happening here, Seth?
Possibly, but I have a possible idea on the Ka-Tet thing going on, so I want to hear the hero, because I have half a mind that the hero is going to be part of it, so I kind of want to know who he is in case that's the main thing, or if there's a third guy or lady that needs to be a part of it.
Great. The hero, his name is Chase, and he is what's called cyberburnt, right? So with the creation of the giant AI that kind of dictates all of humanity, the semi-separated nature of the world where the AI kind of holds everything together, Chase has committed enough crimes, the principal crime being that he wrote a bit of code that did not decrease the AI's efficiency, but increased its inefficiency. Basically, made it take longer to do things. He was trying to put an exploit in disguised as an efficiency fix so that he could basically like get free stuff whenever he wanted, This happened relatively early on with a lot of other giant corporations, people who are very rich and organizations that are very rich now. When the AI first did this, they made a couple of exploits in the system so that like none of the robots that guard the banks and things can like see these corporation people. They like wear specific colors and the robots just like can't see them. Or they can like request once every 10 years a bonus of, 10 trillion, units, and it's like it was put in as an update eons ago, and so it's kind of been the backbone of a lot of other systems, and it's just kind of in there. And that's what Chase was trying to do, was put in his own in an attempt to stop these big corporations. He was trying to basically create like a feedback loop that would cause the AI to have to like scrub the last 30 years or so of updates in order to like fix itself. He basically wanted it to do like a hard reset update, because everyone knows that the AI is now a bloated mess, an incomprehensible bloated mess. People spend their entire lives pouring through the code trying to like understand it because it's constantly changing and updating because 15 years ago that one guy had to put an update in that let the AI write its own code, so for a good 10 years no one could get any money because it was just writing itself. And then it sort of got to the end of where it could go, and so then it opened the bounty up again. But he is what's called cyberburnt. So he is not allowed to link up to any sort of virtual terminals. He cannot buy or sell anything unless it's to people for physical assets. He is not allowed any digital anything. And they say that the cooldown for this punishment will happen in approximately 6 to 5,000 years, 5 to 6,000 years. Right? Which means that in a world sort of populated by cutting edge technology, cameras on every corner, things like that. Also, if he goes into any populated areas and the cameras pick him up, he can go there. He just can't stay there because then dispatch will send out things to find him and bring him back to sort of the outskirts of the city where either other cyberburnt people live or people who can't afford to sort of participate in the culture live. My thought is that this ethnic, that's not true. Ethic-based anarchy was previously enforced by society, right? People, but through the years, people have seen it is really valuable just to have the robots do it. And so it's moving away from an ethics-based anarchy into a authoritarian AI dictatorship.
Yikes.
Right? And so our hero, his name is Chase. He's a hacker programmer kind of guy, not a really violent person. He does not participate in the sport. He kind of he's more of a people person, more of a leader, more of a facilitator. But for the last couple of years, he hasn't used any, he used to be like an expert hacker, but he hasn't used a machine in a long time. And, a lot of the protocols are different. So he's kind of having to maybe branch out and try something else, try some other way of getting people and motivating them and talking to them rather than through the internet, which he can no longer use. That's the hero.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So the Ka-Tet is so I think we'll bring Chase into it.
Right.
As far as the Ka-Tet goes.
Yeah.
The other members of the Ka-Tet, so as a refresher, the Ka-Tet comes from the expression of this idea through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, if no one is aware of that, of like a group of people, normally three, drawn together by fate, to accomplish some kind of goal. Correct?
Yeah.
One could call, no, I don't think it would be a Ka-Tet because I think a Tet is three, but another idea would be like in Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship would have been a version of that Ka-Tet, of a
Absolutely.
Ka-Tet or a, but added up to, what was it, 9, right?
Yeah.
Whatever 9 would be. That would be the same idea. So lots of stories have it, but the Ka-Tet concept is being drawn from that. So in our Ka-Tet, one of the other members of this Ka-Tet is kind of a vagrant. And not that he's a criminal, but I would say in the way that society works, maybe he was like not a violent or a criminal outcast, but it would have been like, he was an illegitimate child, let's say, right? And so that would have caused problems or issues. And so he was kind of cast off, right? And then kind of grew up on the streets or out in the kind of the outside world, right? And so
Right.
he's, I would say, he's fairly illiterate, and just doesn't find his way in like the major metropolis. But what he does do is, as he's had to grow up on the street and in the in the woods and stuff, is how to camouflage, how to where to find food sources outside of having your
Right.
monthly food card that gets run through the system, and whatever, however all this kind of more animated, or not animated but automated system works, right? He's trapping rats or squirrels, and finding little places where he can grow herbs, and where to move in between place to place, so he's not in one place too long, but can kind of pick his way around and kind of weave through different things. I haven't thought of a name, so if a name pops up in your mind, then we can give him a name. Rat, his name is Rat, because that's
That
what kind of he gets called, because he traps and eats the the rats or the rodents, and so people call him Rat. That's his name. The other member of our Ka-Tet, so this is maybe to give some more, let's say, world building or context to the Pantheon class, right?
yeah.
So, not particularly by genetics, but simply some people are born with, as it would be, the gift, and some people, are not, right? And
Right.
so, some people, if they're in a, decent part of society, can get into a school where they're taught how to use that gift. And if with the right training, then part of that, I think you brought it up last time. And that's one of the things that kind of confused me. But now it's like it works well for this, because you were talking about like a chair. And if they're sitting in the chair, they can then, that's where they're using their power to manipulate part of the system.
Yeah.
Right. And at first I was like, okay, but now it makes sense because it fits for what this is. Clear in my head anyways. And so that's really what it is. These people have a gift or a knack to naturally connect to the system, like the computer algorithm, right?
Right.
And control or manipulate some of the code, or to read it, on like a, now I haven't read Dune, but you guys have explained almost like the Mentat, right? So that they're like, they take the spice, but then they can like calculate faster than,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. They
But it's
can.
it's like in direct connection with this machine, with the system. So as many more people are having a harder time reading the code, these people hold more prominence, or at least the trained ones, because they can get in and they're actually then producing more of the effects that it has, and being able to read and understand its mechanism, right? I also kind of think one of the things that came to mind was you guys seen like Minority Report, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So almost an idea like that, where they're like connected to it, and then they get to see inside of, now I know in Minority Report, at least the movie, because I think it's a book too, but where then they're like seeing the events before they happen, right?
Right.
And so, whereas if you get some of these people into a certain school, right, then they get taught how to, read certain parts of the code, manipulate certain parts of the code that, adjust the weather in their kind of controlled environment, or, the markets, and kind of trying to like can manipulate and adjust how it's going to make sure that it's, operating usefully, right? But then,
Okay.
and that's kind of what they get trained to do, and then they sit in that kind of seat of importance for certain things. However, and I think in last time too, we mentioned like in the Wheel of Time, some people of, let's say, lower birth or other places will they'll kind of get looked over, or that gift is kind of not noticed, or they don't get into the training that they need to, right? So I would say, like in the society, some of these people who don't manifest that gift quite as strongly as someone else, or in some cases who hadn't then received the training in how to develop it, become slightly psychic.
Oh, because they don't develop it and learn how to use it in the context of the machines. They just sort of develop it like by themselves. And
Right?
it
They'd
just
be
makes
like, it's going to rain tomorrow, right? And it's like, and it rains tomorrow. Because what's happening is their brain is picking up that the machine is adjusting for that to happen, and they're seeing it in the code as it's going on, right?
right.
And so you have kind of another subclass of these people, I would say, like with these kind of, and some of them it's just, kind of written off as like, that cheap trick, or, whatever, or one of those people that, are trying to pretend like they had the gift, or, maybe it's a complete class that if it's ignored or they don't know it, they don't realize that they are accessing part of the gift. And so they're kind of performers, like, psychic kind of
Palm readers. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
palm readers, and mystic, and some of it might come about, and some of them are more prestigious than others. And that's our third member, is someone that I would say was not in a place where then he was caught and taught and brought into this system, but does in fact have a higher connection to having the gift, to the point of like seeing it all around him, right? And so it'd be like, but I'll get to that other part in a minute. I almost jumped to it. But he was never trained, and so half of it is all just what he has developed and kind of going through life and picking up on going, oh, okay, just like living off of like the intuition of what he is feeling is happening or going to happen,
Right.
or coming up. But the only problem is that he's blind, because in all of the, I almost got scared. I thought you were going to almost do the same thing with your hero when you said cyberburn, but not cyberburn like that, but it basically has burned his visual comprehension, because everything that he's happening is just
Just too overwhelming,
too
basically.
overwhelming,
Yeah.
with sensing all of the little twitches in the system as it's moving through the code at hyper
Yeah, almost incomprehensible speed.
right.
Yeah.
And so his name, again, I don't have a name for these people, but so you've got Rat, you've
Riley.
got Riley. So you have Riley,
Blind Riley. Okay.
blind Riley, and which,
Rat.
being blind isn't necessarily a common trait for these other people that don't have it, but it's kind of special to him because he's got it more powerfully than other people. It just wasn't then directed to like one specific spot. Like if he would have gotten into a school, then they
Right.
would have focused that on like one particular aspect of part of the code, instead of it just wandering into all of it, really. And so through some happenstance, blind Riley kind of hooks up with Rat, and Rat is then kind of his eyes, or like his seeing eye dog. So like they'll come in, and like Rat will kind of set up his stuff, and then he'll like open his little like sideshow for his palm reading or his psychic thing, or whatever it is.
Right.
And then when things get a little dicey, then they can kind of pack up and kind of disappear into the thing. But then that's the other thing with it too, is then part of his sensory is to then know, like it, with all the cameras around, like it'd be like, okay, stand here for a second, okay, turn and look to the left, okay, now tie your shoe, right? That inkling of knowing, okay, now we got to cross the street, like when someone would be watching the camera or reacting to something, or if they're sitting too long, or right. So if, like, living on that edge of intuition, where then they can move through the fire security area
Cool.
without drawing attention, because it's like just walking inside of that intuition to either jump past, when the system, the cameras, the something that's watching is paying attention to what it is that they would be doing or how they would be doing it. And then somehow, maybe because then they then escape out constantly to the, the outskirts, they keep running into Clyde
Chase.
Yeah. I
Um,
was kind of thinking as you were talking about this, is that I wonder if Chase was he's one of these people, except for the fact that he did do the schooling, right? That's why he was almost able to accomplish his goal, right? Because he was like sitting at the chair, able to comprehend, and he like tried to insert in a thing that would have dismantled it, and then something stopped him, someone sold him out or something. And then as a result of that, he was kind of cyber burned and sent out of the city and not kind of able to come back. That's an option.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's holding together. I like that.
Which would kind of throw him off his rocker as well. His whole life has been about interfacing with technology and being able to control it and manipulate it and understand it. And now he can't. Now
Oh, and here would be a twist, man. So maybe the one guy needs to be the wise old man too.
What's the
I was
twist?
thinking the twist would be that then, so they run in with Chase, and then Chase learns how to interface with the system by someone like, what did I the blind guy, gave
Riley.
him a Riley. because of the connection, almost like I'm thinking of like this, like a meditative thing or something like that. Because again, my mind went to like, the Kung Fu master thing.
Right.
Teaches them how to be more aware, because what the training will do is to train you into one specific area, where then if you, let's say, let go of that particular area, or know how to then catch it like he does with the intuition of what's going on, to then possibly move beyond just being aware of it and then interfacing it with your mind without being connected to it.
That's an interesting, or maybe Riley is able to teach Chase that it's less about what's in the computers, and like I don't think it's a virtual world, but the very reality is being changed and manipulated by this. Like, it's
Right.
not just about the computers and the systems inside of the computer and the AI, but the reality of this sort of permeates everything. Interesting. Well, I like this story already. This is the one I'm going to write. No.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you better hurry up and write one.
I know, right?
I was just thinking that, having shields is probably really a good thing for a blind person. Because, like, if he, like, walks into something, he doesn't bang up his face,
Right.
It'd be handy to have a personal shield.
Right. Or it'd be, I was thinking, never mind. Oh, I'll have to think about that. Part of my thought process is that this story needs to go, there's no specific bad guy. The AI is malevolent. That's the bad one, right? Yeah.
Right.
Benevolent's the good one. Malevolent only because it's trying to keep itself safe.
Yeah.
And but it's constantly being bloated because it made the rule, and now it's kind of like bloated. And the bad guys are really the crime organizations, corporations, or whatever, who have these exploits built into the system and now don't want a change. The AI would welcome Chase's update to help it like reset, kind of.
Yeah, if it doesn't recognize it as that, but
But it's
because of the exploits of like the big control companies, they would like build in code that would short stop any effort to defeat their exploits.
Like, imagine a child king with a bunch of evil counselors, and you come to it and you're like, I'm gonna go to war with you, and I'm gonna put your city under siege. The king is good, but he's got so many people around him poisoning him against me that I seem like I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, right.
Then that the king himself acts like a bad guy. But the reality is that he's so sheltered from all actual information. And it's the same thing with the pantheons. They're super sheltered from knowing what these other corporations and people and power players are doing. That's part of the school, is a kind of a brainwashing to have them treat themselves like everything's beautiful. They view the world and it looks beautiful and prosperous, and they're making it rain and it's good. But really, it's kind of like a grungy cyberpunk. The rain is coming down, but it's like vinegar. It's acidic because of the smokestacks. And, the benevolent, I just think of the benevolent pantheon all in like a skyscraper above the clouds, just like, oh, we do what's best for humanity. We do all these things. And it's like, you don't actually know what's going on. And so therefore, again, you're acting as kind of the villain, but as kind of an unwitting villain.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like Marie Antoinette. Well, the peasant, the people are starving. They haven't any bread. We'll let them eat cake.
Yeah. I don't know enough about that to say that that's the same, but yes, exactly. Any other interesting ideas, Seth, before we wrap this up? For world building, we have one more episode, which I'd really like. I think that we can really sort of wrap this up. All these story elements have been super in line so far.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add for this one.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. If you like this episode, give us a call. You don't have a phone number. Give us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. Send us a message on Twitter at @getsbettercast. Give Reed a call. His phone number is, nope, just kidding. Not going to give you that. And then until next time, hold on to your horses because it's getting better.